Hi freshmen, it's Mrs. Nance, and I wanted to get you started this week on your reading pages 1 through 11 by reading the first 4 pages with you, since I love reading with you so much. If you hear a little background noise, it's because Sam is also down here working with me today. And so if you hear some giggles in the background, it's him. He gets to sit with me today. So the reason I wanted to do this is 1, to get you started, 2, because I like reading with you, and 3, I wanted you to hear kind of how Mark Haddon, the author, really wants us to read Christopher's voice. And he, of course, has autism, and so that's in our head when we read or listen, we have to kind of take into account that he thinks about the world a little differently, and therefore his voice, the way he would inflect certain words is going to be a little bit different. So use my guide, my model, to guide your own reading when you continue. Okay, so here is the cover of the book. Mark Haddon is the author. Another thing I wanted to point out to you as you read this is that the chapters are prime numbers. And so prime numbers are numbers that are only divisible by themselves. They don't have no other multiples. And these are the kinds of numbers that Christopher, our character, prefers. And so he numbers all the chapters that way. The chapters are in bold right here. And so it doesn't go 1, 2, 3, 4. It'll go 2, 3, 5, 7, all. And so the chapters are numbered by prime number, which makes it a little challenging, but you'll get the hang of it. Like I said earlier, there's pictures, and we'll see some here in the first few pages as well. Anything else I wanted to tell you guys about before we get started? Just email me questions or concerns if you have them. There's some language in this first part. I will try to kind of censor it just a little bit. Of course, you'll be reading it on the screen with me at the same time. Okay? All right, Mark Haddon, The Curious Incident of the Dog in the Nighttime. It was 7 minutes after midnight. The dog was lying on the grass in the middle of the lawn in front of Mrs. Shears's house. Its eyes were closed. It looked as if it was running on its side, the way dogs run when they think they are chasing a cat in a dream. But the dog was not running or asleep. The dog was dead. There was a garden fork sticking out of the dog. The points of the fork must have gone all the way through the dog and into the ground because the fork had not fallen over. I decided that the dog was probably killed with the fork because I could not see any other wounds in the dog, and I do not think he would stick a garden fork into a dog after it had died for some other reason, like cancer, for example, or a road accident. But I could not be certain about this. Notice that Christopher doesn't have a ton of emotion in his voice when he reads, or when he speaks. He's just stating facts. Next paragraph. I'm right here. I went through Mrs. Shears's gate, closing it behind me. I walked onto her lawn and knelt beside the dog. I put my hand on the muzzle of the dog. It was still warm. The dog was called Wellington. It belonged to Mrs. Shears, who was our friend. She lived on the opposite side of the road, 2 houses to the left. Wellington was a poodle, not one of the small poodles that have hairstyles, but a big poodle. It had curly black fur, but when you got close, you could see that the skin underneath the fur was a very pale yellow, like chicken. I stroked Wellington and wondered who had killed him and why. Chapter 3. Now, this is our second chapter, but the next prime number after 2 is 3. So it's chapter 2, but it's numbered number 3. My name is Christopher John Francis Boone. I know all the countries of the world and their capital cities and every prime number up to 7,057. 8 years ago, when I first met Siobhan, she showed me this picture. And I knew that it meant sad, which is what I felt when I found the dead dog. Then she showed me this picture. And I knew that it meant happy, like when I'm reading about the Apollo space missions, or when I am still awake at 3 a.m. or 4 a.m. in the morning and I can walk up and down the street and pretend that I am the only person in the whole world. Then she drew some other pictures. But I was unable to say what these meant. I got Siobhan to draw lots of these faces and then write down next to them exactly what they meant. I kept the piece of paper in my pocket and took it out when I didn't understand what someone was saying. But it was very difficult to decide which of the diagrams was most like the face they were making because people's faces move very quickly. When I told Siobhan that I was doing this, she got out a pencil and another piece of paper and said it probably made people feel very... And then she laughed. So I tore the original piece of paper up and threw it away, and Siobhan apologized. And now, if I don't know what someone is saying, I ask them what they mean, or I walk away. Chapter 5. I pulled the fork out of the dog and lifted him into my arms and hugged him. He was leaking blood from the fork holes. I like dogs. You always know what a dog is thinking. It has 4 moods: happy, sad, cross, and concentrating. Also, dogs are faithful, and they do not tell lies because they cannot talk. I had been hugging the dog for 4 minutes when I heard screaming. I looked up and saw Mrs. Shears running toward me from the patio. She was wearing pajamas and a housecoat. Her toenails were painted bright pink, and she had no shoes on. She was shouting, "What in F's name have you done to my dog?" I do not like people shouting at me. It makes me scared that they are going to hit me or touch me, and I don't know what is going to happen. "Let go of the dog," she shouted. "Let go of the effing dog, for Christ's sake." I put the dog down onto the lawn and moved back 2 meters. She bent down. I thought she was going to pick the dog up herself, but she didn't. Perhaps she noticed how much blood there was and didn't want to get dirty. Instead, she started screaming again. I put my hand over my ears and closed my eyes and rolled forward till I was hunched up with my forehead pressed onto the grass. The grass was wet and cold. It was nice. Chapter 7. This is a murder mystery novel. Siobhan said that I should write something I would want to read myself. Mostly I read books about science and maths. I do not like proper novels. In proper novels, people say things like, "I am veined with iron, with silver, and with streaks of common mud. I cannot contract into the firm fist, which those clinch who do not depend on stimulus." What does this mean? I do not know. Nor does Father, nor does Siobhan, or Mr. Jeevons. I have asked them. Siobhan has long blonde hair and wears glasses which are made of green plastic. And Mr. Jeevons smells of soap and wears brown shoes that have approximately 60 tiny circular holes in each of them. But I do like murder mystery novels, so I am writing a murder mystery novel. In a murder mystery novel, someone has to work out who the murderer is and then catch them. It is a puzzle. If it is a good puzzle, you can sometimes work out the answer before the end of the book. Siobhan said that the book should begin with something to grab people's attention. That is why I started with the dog. I also started with the dog because it happened to me, and I find it very hard to imagine things which did not happen to me. Siobhan read the first page and said that it was different. She put this word into inverted commas by making wiggly quotation sign with her first and second fingers. She said it was usually people who were killed in murder mystery novels. I said that 2 dogs were killed in The Hound of the Baskervilles, the hound itself, and James Mortimer's spaniel. But Siobhan said they weren't the victims of the murder. Sir Charles Baskerville was. She said that this was because readers cared more about people than dogs. So if a person was killed in the book, readers would want to carry on reading. I said that I wanted to write about something real, and I knew people who had died, but I did not know any people who had been killed, except Mr. Paulson, Edward's father from school, and that was a gliding accident, not murder, and I didn't really know him. I also said that I cared about dogs because they were faithful and honest, and some dogs were cleverer and more interesting than some people. Steve, for example, who comes to the school on Thursdays, needs help to eat his food, and could not even fetch a stick. Siobhan asked me not to say this to Steve's mother. Chapter 11. But again, it's like chapter 4 or 5, but because the next prime number is 11, that's why it's numbered that. Then the police arrived. I like the police. They have uniforms and numbers, and you know what they are meant to be doing. There was a policewoman and a policeman. The policewoman had a little hole in her tights on her left ankle and a red scratch in the middle of the hole. The policeman had a big orange leaf stuck to the bottom of his shoe, which was poking out from one side. The policewoman put her arms around Mrs. Shears and led her back toward the house. I lifted my head off the grass. The policeman squatted down beside me and said, "Would you like to tell me what's going on here, young man?" I sat up and said, "The dog is dead." "I'd got that far," he said. I said, "I think someone killed the dog." "How old are you?" he asked. I replied, "I am 15 years and 3 months and 2 days." And what precisely were you doing in the garden?" he asked. "I was holding the dog," I replied. "And why were you holding the dog?" he asked. This was a difficult question. It was something I wanted to do. I liked dogs. It made me sad to see that the dog was dead. I like policemen too, and I wanted to answer the question properly, but the policeman did not give me enough time to work out the correct answer. "Why were you holding the dog?" he asked again. "I like dogs," I said. "Did you kill the dog?" he asked. I said, "I did not kill the dog." "Is this your fork?" he asked. I said, "No." "You seem very upset about this," he said. He was asking too many questions, and he was asking them too quickly. They were stacking up in my head like little loaves in the factory where Uncle Terry works. The factory is a bakery, and he operates the slicing machines. And sometimes a slicer is not working fast enough, but the bread keeps coming and there is a blockage. I sometimes think of my mind as a machine, but not always as a bread slicing machine. It makes it easier to explain to other people what is going on inside it. The policeman said, "I'm going to ask you once again." I rolled back onto the lawn and pressed my forehead to the ground again and made the noise that Father calls groaning. I make this noise when there is too much information coming into my head from the outside world. It is like when you are upset and you hold the radio against your ear and you tune it halfway between two stations so that all you get is white noise. And then you turn the volume right up so this is all you can hear. And then you know you're safe because you cannot hear anything else. The policeman took a hold of my arm and lifted me onto my feet. I didn't like him touching me like this. And this is when I hit him. Okay, so I'm going to stop there. That's the first 4 pages, and then you will finish the 5 through 11, so 1 through 11 total for this week. When you go back to Schoology, you'll see some discussions, both for the autism introduction videos and then a discussion to go with the first few pages that I just read to you about what are some features of Christopher, what do you know about him, how does he think about the world. Okay, so I hope you like it to start. It's a pretty quick read. And sorry if I was going too fast. It's kind of hard to follow along with me talking too. So good luck. Please email me with any questions. And we will forge ahead. Miss you guys, and I hope you're doing well. I really do. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.